focus.
Folks going,
BJ.
they know.
Y'all
know what I'm talking.
No doubt.
Y'all motherfuckers get busy, don't y'all?
Just free. How many y'all think?
Hey, look.
How many though?
What y'all think? Oh, y'all think this ass all cap?
More than 5.
Hello everyone. I wasn't gonna release this video. I started on this video back in February of this year. After watching the video, I knew I couldn't upload it. It was too raw for YouTube and I don't indulge in ratting. That's not what drugstore represents. Drugstore films and drugstore music is strictly for the street. We don't expose our people. This will be my final video about the late great rapper King Von. May God have mercy on his soul. Von needed help. It's obvious that he suffered from mental issues. His heart was in a good place. He had love for everyone but his ops. He was very loyal to his friends and had the heart of gold. He helped elderly people, family, friends. He didn't turn his back on anyone in his circle. This documentary was made to save lives. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. There's no escaping karma. You receive what you dish out. I'd like to send my condolences out to all 8 families that's involved with this documentary. It's truly a sad situation. Everything that I'm about to tell you all was meant to be told to the public. Von bragged about having bodies till he was killed. On November 20, 2012, King Von tweeted that he had murdered 5 people and shot 10. He was only 18 years old at the time. This was just a year after friends O.D. Perry and Batoon were killed. On August 9, 2012, King Von witnessed a guy by the name of 50 Shots shooting his close friend White. Police witnessed the shooting as well. When officers approached 50 Shots, he opened fire on the officers. 50 Shots was apprehended, charged with murder and 2 attempted murders. King Von said in the song Demon from his debut album Welcome to O Block, when White got killed, I seen it. I was right there, still can't believe it. That turned me into a demon. Me and T-Roy was scheming. According to Von, he snapped after witnessing White get murdered. Him and T-Roy was now ready to kill. Joining a gang is like joining the army. You're training to kill people. Even a coward that joined the army and become a killer after getting brainwashed. Some soldiers just do what they have to do to survive. Some soldiers just do what they told and some soldiers just overdo it. Von was a soldier that overdid it. James Johnson aka T-Roy grew up in Parkway Gardens. He jumped off the porch at an early age. T-Roy was known to be a shooter. He allegedly went on multiple hits with O.D. Perry. Between 2010 and 2011, some called T-Roy the heart of O Block. He allegedly shot FBG Duck. Back in 2013, there's a video of T-Roy shooting at his ops for walking past O Block. He only stood 5'3", weighed around 120 pounds. T-Roy and King Von were close friends. On April 28, 2012, T-Roy allegedly murdered Marlon Monroe, aka Doc from STLEBT Monroe, had just left work and walked down the block to a convenience store. He never made it inside the shop. A gunman passing by sprayed bullets onto the corner, striking Monroe. It wasn't until hours later that Monroe's body was discovered. A 16-year-old relative who was in a rush trying to make curfew was crossing through the abandoned lot when he found Monroe's lifeless corpse in the 6300 block of South St. Lawrence Avenue. Some say the King Von was with T-Roy on that hit. If that's true, then that would be body number 2 for King Von. Although T-Roy get the credit for that body, Von was allegedly there to assist. On December 3, 2011, 16-year-old Dale Fisher had just left a recreational center run by the city's ceasefire organization when he was gunned down in Chicago's West Woodlawn neighborhood. Witnesses tell the police the attack happened around 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon as the teen and his friend walked near 62nd and South St. Lawrence Avenue. Friends say the two were headed to a corner store to buy a bag of potato chips when a two-door silver car pulled up. A gunman leaned out and opened fire, striking Dale in the chest several times. The other That was only the beginning. King Von was a demon before witnessing his friend White that killed. Von allegedly became obsessed with going out on hits after Dale was murdered. The ops knew who murdered Dale and they wanted revenge. That's when King Von's name began ringing bells throughout the Woodlawn area. In Chicago, killing at an early age is common. Some kids begin killing at the age 12. King Von, on the other hand, didn't start getting into trouble until high school. Some say he was spoiled rotten. Even after his father's death, his mother still kept him in nice clothes. Von wasn't a drug dealer. Sometimes to make money, him and his friends broke in people's houses and stole valuable items. He was once arrested and had to serve months in boot camp.
You right. You weren't supposed to. But on my kids, you weren't claiming Wick City when we was going to have Park either.
King Von comes from the Kiloword 078YKN Black Disciple set, although O Block is his main set. However, the fact that Kiloword 078 was not his main set will not prevent him from participating in the war between YKN and G-Ville. At Kiloword 078, King Von will be close. The J-Lo, for example, killed few years ago, but he was not even a gang member. You should also know that at one time, brawls, giant fights between two or more sets, were still trendy. Even if today we know King Von's reputation as a rowdy, even back then, the rapper was always in the front row to fight against the members of G-Ville.
On Sunday, I embarrassed him. I made him walk all the way up 63rd crying in front of everybody. The whole killer ward out there. On Sunday, come from that bar.
Before OD get killed, King Von will start hanging out indirectly with FBG Duck, FBG, Dutchie and Buddha. Indeed, a member of the 078YKN was at school with members of STLED, and a relationship was established between them. As a result, King Von, FBG Duck, Dutchie, and Buddha hung out together without anything happening since they shared the same friends. However, there was one exception. When FBG Buddha jumped on King Von after school one day. This was the last time they were together. It was time for Von to choose one side. He could no longer represent two gangs. A young King Von chose Wick City. This was around 2009. Around this time, King Von began hanging out in Parkway Gardens every day. His cousins, Boss Top and E-Dog, are from there. Von became close friends with Chief Keef, J Money, O.D. Perry, T-Roy, among others. Wooski was living in Parkway Gardens at the time as well, but he wasn't a Black Disciple. Wooski's older brother Mike was a loyal member of Wick City and close friends with O.D. Perry. Wooski was a gangster disciple, but he hung out with the young Wick City members, Wooski's other big brother Fella was a member of Wick City as well. Fella was killed in 2007 by a gangster disciple. Mike wanted Wooski to become a Black Disciple for that reason, but an 11 years old Wooski refused to switch gangs. Around this time, O.D. Perry was the heart of Wick City. He was known for shooting. He allegedly shot more than 5 people. O.D. was one of the first young members in Wick City to put in work. In 2009, he allegedly murdered a guy by the name of Jeremy Marshall aka Lil 4. Lil 4 was a gangster disciple from Jero set that motivated the other young members of Wick City to kill. O.D. protected everyone in Parkway Gardens. He was loved by everyone who lived there. "19-year-old Nikita Washington aka Kita was also loved in Parkway Gardens. For those who don't know, Parkway Gardens is the name of the housing project. Wick City was the name of the Black Disciple set that's located in Parkway Gardens. the gang members called Parkway Gardens, Wick City. Kita grew up in Parkway Gardens. Her apartment was the hangout spot for the young Wick City gang members. She fed them, supplied them with drugs and alcohol, even let them sleep over. They looked at her as a big sister. Kita didn't mind fighting for the young gang members. When they had problems with females, they went to get Kita to beat up the females. Kita was special to Wick City. Unfortunately, on September 3, 2009, Nikita Washington died of heart failure. That left a dark cloud over Parkway Gardens. That was most of the young members' first time losing a close friend. Between 2009 and 2011, numerous of shootouts took place between Wick City and Jarrow. Again. For those who don't know, Jarrow City is a gangster disciple set that's located just blocks away from Parkway Gardens on 62nd and Vernon Eberhard. They are closely allied with STL. STL is another gangster disciple set that's located just 1 block away on 63rd and St. Lawrence. Jarrow City and Wick City beef started years back. Wooski's older brother Fella was allegedly killed by a member of Jarrow. That's the reason Wooski's other brother Big Mike was so close to the Wick City members. O.D. Perry was Wick City top hitter at the time. Not only was he a shooter, he knew how to shoot. Wooski, who's a member of the STL gangster disciple set, would go and give Jarrow City information about Wick City. It came to a point where the older members of Wick City made the young members stop hanging out with Wooski. In 2010, young gang members would fight without using weapons. It was common for young gang members to come on each other's turf and fight. O.D. Perry was a couple years older. Gang members his age were all using guns. Members from ages 12 to 15 were still getting into brawls. Most of the time the brawls were broken up by an older member. Both gangs would go their separate ways and live again to fight the next day. But that would soon change. On August 25, 2010, around 11:20 p.m., Wooski, 50 shots and several other members of STL and Jarrow City decided to walk over to Parkway Gardens to fight. They arrive around 11:25 p.m. A huge brawl break out in the parking lot. "29-year-old Laverick Marshall aka Easy was an older member of Wick City. Some say that he were participating in the brawl. A 13-year-old Wooski allegedly shot and killed Reezy. That was it. Wooski was no longer welcomed in Wick City. His older brother Big Mike could no longer protect him. Wooski had to move out of Parkway Gardens. This is when the younger members of Wick City became more active. Members such as T-Roy, J-Money and Big A. This was only 11 months after losing Kita. Reezy was loved in Wick City. The young members really looked up to him. The war between Wick City and Jarrow only escalated. On August 11, 2011, almost a year after the death of Reezy, things even gotten darker for Wick City. O.D. Perry was hanging out in the parking lot. Once again, at around 11:25 p.m., FBG Budda, K.I., Lil B and maybe one other gangster disciple member allegedly decided to walk over to Parkway Gardens. They see O.D. Perry and several others hanging. O.D. Perry was gunned down. He died at the hospital an hour later. The shooters even confiscated his handgun. That was one of the darkest days in Wick City. Parkway Gardens was never the same. To honor O.D. Perry, they renamed Wick City to O-Block. Kakira Barnes, aka K.I., posted pictures on social media holding O.D. Perry's gun. O.D. Perry was 20 years old. His name will always be remembered. O Block is now the most famous projects in the world. But O.D. Perry wasn't the only person that was made famous that year. 7 months earlier, 15-year-old Shondale Grigory aka Tuka was shot and killed standing at a nearby bus stop. His alleged killer is a member of the Black Disciple set TYMB around. This time, rapper Chief Keef was dropping mixtapes and uploading videos to YouTube. He was becoming a star. Just 2 months after O.D. Perry was killed, O Block, formerly known as Wick City lost another member. On October 19, 2011, Edward Riley aka Batoon was walking from the corner store with his girlfriend. At around 7:55 p.m., Wooski and another member of STL allegedly approached and shot Batoon. A wounded Batoon ran into Parkway Gardens and collapsed by a building. A 15-year-old boy was shot in the head as well. Batoon was rushed to the hospital and was pronounced dead at around 10 p.m. The 15-year-old survived. Batoon was 20 years old. Wooski was feared by many O Block members. He knew how to sneak into Parkway Gardens. Wooski knew a lot about O Block. His older brother Big Mike tried his best to keep other O Block members from killing his little brother. But Wooski just wouldn't stop. He was a huge problem for O Block. The 17-year-old King Von was losing friends back to back. The gun violence in Chicago was at an all-time high. He was surrounded by killers. Life just wasn't the same for Von. He was slowly becoming a monster. Von's father Silk was a Black Disciple as well. He was a well-known drug dealer and killer. In 2005, Silk was murdered by a gangster disciple. That's another reason Von became a Black Disciple. / 2012 was supposed to be a good year for the O Block members. Chief Keef was the biggest up-and-coming artist in Chicago. His videos on YouTube were getting millions of views. In the summer of 2012, Chief Keef signs a huge record deal with Interscope Records. That gave O Block life again. But unfortunately, the 16-year-old rapper couldn't bring everyone along. Many was left. The year started off rough. On February 16, 19-year-old Sheroid Liggins was leaving the corner store at around 6:35 p.m. when Boss Trell allegedly shot him in the back of the head using a red dot sight. The police discovered Sheroid lying on the street at around 6:46 p.m. Sheroid died days later in the hospital. Before we continue, I need you to understand that the O Block Black Disciple set is a small set. All of the members grew up together. Most of them are related. 600 Front Street 061, 300 Lamron, Blackgate 054 and THF are their allies. They're at war with STLEBT, Tiquin World, Gero City, Mob, 051 Young Money and Brick Squad. O Block was looked at as one of the weakest sets once O.D. Perry was killed. It was teased on social media by their ops because O.D. Perry was allegedly killed by a 14-year-old girl. Things were getting out of hand. The bigger Chief Keef got, the bigger or got. The gangster disciples in Chicago didn't want to see a Black Disciple get rich. For gang members, more money mean more guns. Rapper Chief Keef allegedly provided O Block with weapons in the beginning after signing his deal. Now that we got all of that out the way, let's jump back to the White story. That was the night that changed King Von. He said, when White got killed, I seen it, I was right there, still can't believe it, that turned me into a demon. Von wasn't only talking about being evil, he was saying witnessing White's murder turned him into a serial killer. As I said before, O Block is a small Black Disciple set. All of the members grew up together. Von and White were close friends. They were hanging out that night near East 63rd Street and South Martin Luther King Drive. It was 30 minutes till Von's 18th birthday. At around 11:32 p.m., 50 shots along with 2 other gangster disciples run up Hiring shots. White and Von run. White gets shot in the back, Von gets away. The cops seen the whole thing. They approach the scene and get into a shootout with 50 shots. 50 shots get hit in the leg and surrender. The other two gangster disciples ran and got away. Wooski was allegedly one of the other gangster disciples. King Von allegedly seen him. "17-year-old Medell McCambry is Wooski's older cousin. Although he had dreams of being a professional football player, he was influenced by his cousin Wooski and other gangster disciple members to join the gang. Medell had to prove himself to the other members. He began participating in brawls and carrying guns. On October 13, 2012, Medell and his 18-year-old cousin Miles were on their way to meet a girl when King Von allegedly walked up and opened fire in the 6300 block of South Rhodes Avenue just before 9:30 p.m. Miles tried to run away but was shot in the back several times. Responding paramedics found both of them in the street. Medell was rushed to the hospital with gunshot wounds to the chest. He died shortly after. Miles survived but is now paralyzed. Wooski go out searching for King Von the very next day. After having no luck finding Von, the impatient Wooski run to social media. King Von and T-Roy began going on more hits together. Sometimes other O-Block members such as J Money and Big A would come along, as well as a few 600 members such as D Rose and L.A. Capone. King Von's name began ringing bells. He was now known as a killer. On October 30th, just weeks after Medell's death, King Von, J Money and T-Roy allegedly stood outside of a house that morning waiting for Derek Johnson aka P5 Crack to come out. At around 9:10 a.m., P5 comes outside and Von, T-Roy and J Money allegedly shoot him multiple times.
We both fuck KI, I beat KI. Von got beat up at home.
See, now you trying to.
Around this time, King Von and KI were flirting on social media. It started weeks before Medell's death. In September of 2012, Von and KI got into a fight on the train. KI was allegedly getting the best of Von when other Black Disciple members jumped in. After jumping KI, Von go to social media and brag. King Von then began having a crush on KI. At first KI thought it was cute. By reading their messages it's obvious that she had a crush on Von as well. King Von and T-Roy killing spree continued. They were now O-Block top hitters. O-Block was no longer the weakest set. Both King Von and T-Roy were obsessed with going out on hits. Just a week after P5 was murdered, Boss Trell from STL was killed. "17-year-old Rodney Stewart aka Boss Trell was one of STL top hitters. He was good with guns. He knew how to clean them, take them apart, and most importantly, he knew how to shoot. Boss Trell was like the O.D. Perry of STL. He protected his neighborhood and was a loved member." On November 8, 2012, Boss Trell was leaving a female house at around 6:30 a.m. While walking up the alley, King Von allegedly shot him in the back of the head. He was found around 6:45 a.m. and rushed to the hospital. A weapon was discovered underneath him. Boss Trell was pronounced dead about 11:30 p.m. King Von was now a stone-cold killer. It was no turning back. That's why him and T-Roy were so close. They allegedly shared some of the same bodies. King Von wasn't lying when he said he killed 5 gangster disciples and shot 10. On November 21, 2012, King Von was arrested and booked into Cook County Jail for unlawful possession of a firearm. He served 15 months. King Von went to jail wearing rapper Lil Durk's expensive wristwatch. While serving time at Cook County Jail, Von became a better fighter. His only weapon was his hands. He depended on family and friends to put money on his books. Von shared a cell with an elderly disabled man who he helped every day. On September 2, 2013, while Von was serving time, his close friend Jerome Wood aka J Money was shot and killed. His alleged killers were Lil B and K.I.J Money was shot in the head and face several times. That was a big loss for O Block. King Von was released in February of 2014. He immediately wanted to get revenge for J Money. T-Roy made several attempts when Von was in jail, but couldn't succeed. He continued communicating with K.I. on social media. This time the energy seemed different. K.I. taunted O Block on social media about J Money. Lil B and K.I. were O Block biggest targets at the time. Mainly Lil B. Because K.I. wasn't really a threat to O Block. I hate to tell you all this, but K.I. wasn't no assassin. She may only had went on 4 to 5 hits. There's a twist to the O.D. Perry murder. Three months after Tuka's death, the gangster disciples all came together to shoot FBG Duck's first video and to celebrate Tuka's birthday. He would have turned 16. The teens were drinking and using drugs all day. Insiders say that there were a lot more than 3 or 4 people that went on the O.D. Perry hit. Some people say that O.D. Perry's real killer is FBG Duck's younger cousin Scrap from the mob gangster disciple set. In 2016, FBG Budda allegedly told detectives that his was Boss Trell and K.I. who did the shooting. Over 20 people allegedly went on the O.D. Perry hit, but he was only hit twice. Once in the buttocks and once in the neck. The Chicago police believe that K.I. were involved in several shootings and at least one murder. She was arrested for discharging a firearm back in 2011. She was only 11 years old. Although K.I. had a gangster reputation, she still wasn't a big threat to O Block. The Kira Barnes only wanted to be a part of something. She felt protected and loved by the gang. The gang was her family. She no longer wanted to be a social worker. Just like Everyone else, she was expecting the FBG rap group to get a record deal. She really supported them. She knew all of their songs from word to word. Kakira would have done anything for her fellow gang members and they would have done anything for her. Rawson Shaw aka Lil B was shot and killed by the Chicago police just a month after King Von was released from jail. Lil B was 20 years old. King Von was a killer. His life became all about dissing the ops and going on hits. There are 4 main types of serial killers. The 4 main types of serial killers are thrill seekers, mission-oriented, visionary killers, and power control seekers. King Von was a thrill seeker type of serial killer. Thrill killers are a type of serial killer that derives immense satisfaction from the process of murder, that is, the acts leading up to it, such as tracking their victim rather than the killing itself. They come to crave the euphoric adrenaline rush provided by stalking and capturing their victim. Tracking their prey becomes an addiction for them, much like a narcotic drug. It's obvious that Von needed help. Him and T-Roy were a deadly duo. They most likely would have committed more murders together in 2014 if T-Roy wasn't on the run. They were only together for a month and a half once Von was free. On April 9, 2012, rapper Chief Keef's older cousin Mario Hess, aka Blood Money, was shot in front of a family member's house. At around 9:30 p.m. 2 gunmen fired more than 24 shots, striking the victim as many as 10 times and wounding a relative. Blood Money later died at the hospital. He was 30 years old. AI was one of the alleged shooters. That was a huge hit. Blood Money had just signed a record deal with Interscope Records. This is when KI became a big threat. She was now allegedly involved in 3 different murders. O.D. Perry, J Money, and now Blood Money's. She didn't post anything on Twitter, none that day. The day after, she began posting as usual. The next morning, KI get ready for Boss Trell's birthday. He would have been 19 years old. KI hops back on Twitter. She meets up with FBG Buddha. At around 12:30 p.m. she tweets her location. Around 3:30 p.m., witnesses say a hooded man come up and shoot KI several times. FBG Buddha and another man were shot as well. KI was rushed to the hospital. She was pronounced dead around 5:30 p.m. She suffered gunshot wounds to the chest and jaw. Kakira Barnes was 17 years old. At this point, Von had done too much to turn back. Some people believe that there were More than one shooter in the KI murder. But that wasn't in the police report, and that's not what the neighbors witnessed. Leroy had to go and turn himself in the same day KI was murdered. He wouldn't be free. Until 2016. The deadly duo were no longer together. Von began going on more hits with other O-Block members such as Big A and Wooski's brother Mike. He even allegedly went on hits with members from THF. On May 29, 2014, just a month after KI's murder, King Von and Mike go to a house party in the 5700 block of South LaSalle Street at around 5 p.m. King Von and a guy by the name of Malcolm Stuckey gets in an altercation. King Von and Mike allegedly left the party and returned around 6:10 p.m. shooting at the porch, hitting 3 men. King Von allegedly tased Malcolm down and shoot him in the back of the head. Malcolm Stuckey died later that day. He was 19 years old. Mike was immediately arrested after the shooting. He then cooperated with the police. He admitted to firing over 15 shots at the porch, but he made it clear that it was King Von who committed the murder. Von was arrested days later and held with no bond. Rapper Lil Durk kept in touch with King Von. When Von was released from jail back in 2014, he gave Lil Durk back his expensive wristwatch, and that made Durk like Von even more. Lil Durk knew what Von was going through and decided to help. The 21-year-old King Von was stressed out. Not only was he facing life in prison, he allegedly was having recurring nightmares. He could hardly sleep at night. Von would sit up till daylight to ease the anxiety sometimes. Things didn't go how Mike planned it. He would now have to come to court and testify. When refusing to testify, the state charged Mike with the murder since he already admitted to firing shots. Mike was sentenced to 40 years in prison. After witnesses failed to testify, all charges against King Von were dropped, and towards the end of 2017 he walked free. In March of 2019, King Von allegedly murdered Tariq Livid in Atlanta. According to APD, a man opened fire hitting 5 people, including 27-year-old Tariq Livid, who died from his injuries. The other 4 victims were taken to Grady Hospital and were treated for non-life-threatening injuries. King Von was now a superstar. He still wanted to kill. He was allegedly putting hits out on his ops. But FBG Duck dead, O-Block felt victorious. STL lost their only star, and they lost the money. Duck was the glue that kept things together. Once he was killed, STLEBT was no longer a factor. Well, we all know how the story ended. King Von was killed on November 6, 2020 in Atlanta, Georgia. He left behind 2 kids. May God have mercy on his soul. Thank you for watching. See you next time.